Good morning, everyone. The Gemara that we're learning. So we were learning about washing one's hands. Who is the one who washes first for the netilas yadayim, the washing one's hands before the meal, after the meal, mayim achreinim. And so we saw two things about the washing before the meal. One is what was said in the name from the Persians, the Parsiim. This was said by the Exilarch. The Exilarch mentioned that the Parsiim, they wash their hands in a way. The way they do it is that the gadol, the greatest one of them, washes his hands first, right? And Mayim Rishonim Mehechan Maschilin. That was the Gemara. From where does who do you start from for the Mayim Rishonim, for the washing of one's hands before a meal? And so the Gemara said that, so the Reish Galusa, the Exilarch, said the Parsiim, the way they do it is they start from the Gadol. Yesh, so Reb Sheshus asked, he's going to sit there and wait with his hands washed, and he's going to just watch that his hands don't touch anything until everyone washes their hands. So the Gemara answers that they would bring his table to him right away, and he could start eating immediately. Yeah, that's the understanding, at least. So that's the answer to the question. Now, what happened? What does the Gemara say after this? That Rav Shesha said, okay, that's the Persians. Let me tell you what we do. And what do the Jewish people do? What is it done? How is it done in Bavel? And where how did Rav Shesha what does the Brisa say? I should say, what does the Brisa say how it's done? So it turns out that it's exactly the same thing. Mayim rishonim maschilin min hagadol. You start from the most important person. So what's the question on this Gemara? First, Rav Sheshus asks the Reish Galusa. He says, "How could you do such a thing? You have the people. The great person is washing his hands first. He waits for everyone else. How could you have such a thing? He's going to wait for." And what does Rav Sheshus say? But let me tell you the Brisa. From what the Brisa, how is it done? The most important person washes first. So the question is, anyone?
The difference.
He has to then wait for the other people to wash.
Yeah, the question is, you're asking a whole question on the way the Persians do it. What about the way you're saying? You bring a Brisa, it seems like it's exactly the same thing. Same problem. So there are different ways of answering this question. One way of answering it is that he actually wasn't, he was wondering all along, how is this appropriate, or how should it really be done? And he wanted to hear if the Persians have a way of doing it. So he was asking it as if it sounds surprising, but really, he was really wondering, in general, if this is what is the appropriate thing? How do you get around this issue? So that's more of a balabatish, a simple way of explaining the Gemara. There is another way of understanding it, and that is that the way the Gemara's question, the initial question was that Rav Sheshus was saying that our way of washing, it makes sense. The most important person is going to be reciting a bracha for everyone else. And being that he's going to be moitzi everyone else with the hamoitzi, Therefore, it would make sense that he should wash his hands first, because by doing that, everyone else will know that he is the one who is Baitseya. He's the one who's going to be cutting the bread. He's in charge. By him washing first, it's sort of like an honor, really, to have him wash. Now, so in other words, he's washing first. It sort of shows who he is, his importance. So it makes sense that he should wash first. But the Parsiim, and according to this explanation, we're learning that it means the Persians that aren't Jewish. So the Persians, the way they do it, they're not making a bracha for everyone else. They're not being mitzi everyone else. And therefore, it seems surprising that the Persians would have some guy wash his hands, very dignified, and then then he's waiting for everyone else to eat. That's the way. That's smart. That's the way it should be done to show honor. So on that, the Gemara answers that no, they would bring the table to the. They would bring the table to the person that he could, and it wasn't a problem. He could eat right away. And now, according to this, so let's take a look now at the next brisa. So now we're going to say the brisa here. The next brisa that Rav Sheshes brings, so he says, how should you wash? So you should wash. The most important person should wash first. What is the meaning behind washing first? How do you learn the brisa now? So according to the way Rav Sheshes, it says, let me tell you the way we do it. Now, according to the first way I explained, what comes out is that Rav Sheshes basically is saying, the appropriate way to do it is you have the most important person wash first. And the way Rashi adds into this brisa, he says they bring him the table right away. In other words, based on the answer that the exilarch gave Rav Sheshes is bringing the brisa, and he's explaining it must mean the same. In other words, the understanding of the brisa will be, how you just explained it before, the way we explained the Persians. That's the first way we learned. In other words, Rav Sheshes himself was a little unclear. He didn't know exactly how this is the appropriate thing, but basically he heard from the Reish Galusa, the exilarch, this is the way to do it. You let the person in charge, you let him wash first, and bring him a table right away, and therefore it's an honor. He doesn't have to wait there watching that his hands don't touch anything and so on, and it's not a problem for him to wash first. It's good. You let him wash first. That's the way it should be done. Okay, so that's one way of learning. Another way of learning the brisa would be that the way that the Yidden do it is that we wash first, even though we don't have a table in front of us. We don't have a table in front of us. In other words, they're not bringing the person in charge of the table, but he's going to be he's being mitzi everyone else. But the honor for him is that he is the person in charge, and therefore he washes first, and everyone knows that he is the one who's going to be breaking bread and reciting the bracha for everyone else. So according to this, the question is, what are we supposed to do? What it boils down to is the brisa doesn't explain itself. The story of the Persians tell us what happened. By the Persians, we have a story and we have an explanation. There's a table that they would bring in front of the person in charge, and therefore that's the way it was done. They would bring it right after he washes, and you're all set. That story we understand that when they're going to bring a table before him and he can break bread and eat bread and so on, he's all set. The story here in the brisa, the rule in the brisa, it doesn't clarify to us. Is this talking about that they're going to bring a table to him first? Is he waiting for everyone else? Is he eating the bread right away? The brisa does not clarify. So one way of learning is, well, we're going to assume it's the same as the previous Gemara. The previous Gemara had explained it already, and the brisa doesn't explain it, but that's the assumption. It's the same thing as the brisa. According to that, what would be nowadays Nowadays, who should wash first on your Shabbos table? Practically speaking, your Shabbos table. Who should wash first? Should you let the kids wash first? Should you let the adults wash, the person in charge wash first? Who should wash first? I'm talking practically speaking. How should you do it? So according to the first way of learning the Gemara, according to the simple way, where the Brisa is basically a continuation of the previous story of Persians. So if you want to learn it that way, what comes out is that if you are going to make your own hamaitzi, and they're all making their own hamaitzis, wash first. If you are going to be waiting for everyone else and being maitzi them, guess what? You should not wash first. Because the law of washing first applied when they bring you the table and you're going to make your own hamaitzi. But if you're going to be maitzi other people, then it really wouldn't, and you're going to wait for them. So you have the question of Rav Sheshis. The important person washes and he waits for everyone? No, don't wash first, right? Now, according to the second way of learning the Gemara, that the Brisa is different than the Persians, and the Persians' way, we're talking about Goyim and whatever, and the Brisa is talking about the way we do it. And the most important person washes first, and he shows that he's going to be the one who's going to break bread. So according to that, even if you're not washing, you're not going to be breaking bread right away, meaning you're going to be waiting for everyone and be mighty them, you should still wash first, because you're actually going to be exempting everyone else, and everyone should see that you're the one in charge. You're washing first. That's the way it's done. That's the way you should do it. That you should wash first. So it's interesting in Shulchan Aruch. It's a little unclear. It's a little vague, and it's based on the fact that the Brisa doesn't clarify what to do. So, for example, the tour and the Beis Yosef on the tour, they bring down this story that the Beis Yosef says, according to this explanation of Rashi, the way Rashi learned, that the Brisa and the story of the Persians is basically the same thing. So according to this, nowadays that we don't have small tables in front of us, and you shouldn't, the important person should not be washing first, so that he won't have to sit around and wash his hands until everyone else washes. Right? It would make sense that's the conclusion over there. That for the Persia, for the way it was done in Persia, fine, that's okay. You could wash first. But the way we do it, where we have one table, everyone's gonna come and sit down in front of. Everyone's gonna till they sit down and gonna wait for everyone. That's not appropriate. Then the Beis Yosef says, but the Brisa doesn't clarify which way it should be. The Brisa doesn't say, oh, this only applies if they bring a table before you and you're going to be breaking bread right away. But if not, then you don't, the Brisa doesn't differentiate. So therefore, there's room to say the opposite.
Rabbi.
And then he says, and this is what it sounds like from the Rambam. The Rambam says, Gadol noitel yadav tchila. The most important person always washes first. And he doesn't make a differentiation. You're going to be waiting for everyone. You're going to break bread right away. So then he brings, the Beis Yosef brings that from the Rosh, that he brings that it's brought later on in the Torah from the Rosh, that the Rosh would always wash last. And the reason he would wash last is not to have a long hefsek, or not to have a long separation, not to speak in between. And so he would wash last. So in other words, there's room to say wash first. There's room to say wash last. The Mishnah Brura has, which is the Beis Yosef, when he wrote his halacha, his final halacha sefer, he wrote that if many people are eating in a meal, the most important person should wash first. But he says the Rosh was common for him to wash last, shaloi lahafsik, shaloi ladaber, not to make an interruption and not to speak in the middle. So this is the way the Rush did it, and the Mishnah Berurah brings that in the time of the Gemara it was different. They would bring tables in front of every person. They would eat right away. But nowadays there's one table, so they all eat together. Better if the most important person washes last, so he won't come to have a long separation, and he'll end up speaking in the middle. Now he says that
I have a fundamental question, Rabbi.
okay, then we're going to let you break through, emergency breakthrough. Yes.
Yeah, why does Reish Galuta bring the story of the Persians? Are we to copy the Goyim or what?
Well,
Follow
again,
the Goyim?
it seems that that's one way of learning, is that it's talking about the Goyim. Another way of learning is that it's not necessarily talking about the Goyim, the Persian Jews he's talking about. But one shot is, it seems that it's referring to the Goyim. And
But basically, he's really saying the same thing as Rav Sheshet.
well, that's what we're dealing with.
Why is he bringing that example? I don't understand it.
So we
What's
are
the
dealing
purpose?
we are dealing with that. I should mention that the main thing that he was dealing with was what's the order of sitting? And the most important person is in the middle. The second to most important is above him. The third to most important is below him. That was a difference between the way the Persians did it and the way it says to do it in the Bryce, right? So that's one.
I hope he's talking about the Jews.
Okay, fine. That is a simple interpretation. I was bringing from another commentary, the Meiri, who implies that he's referring to the Goyim, but the simple understanding is he's talking about the Yidden.
Okay.
But Rabbi,
Yes.
according to the Gemara brings the story of the Reish Galuta first. And then Rav Sheshet comes in, or whoever writes the Gemara basically says, and Rav Sheshet brings in his comments. So the Reish Galuta is first. It's not Rav Sheshet, and then, why does the Reish Galuta bring whatever? The Reish Galuta it was placed in the Gemara first, as for whatever reason. So he is the one that everyone is now comparing to. It's not the Rav Sheshet to whom everybody is being compared to. It's the other way around.
I'm not sure. So what do you mean to say?
Yeah, in the Gemara itself, the order of the explanations were the Reish Galuta first, and then Rav Sheshet.
Okay.
And the way Ben is bringing it, it's like Rav Sheshet was brought in first, and then the Reish Galuta was brought in next.
No, he brought in first, but why? Did he bring an example, an external example, and not from the Braisa?
Maybe because he's the Reish Galuta.
Why didn't he bring it from the Braisa?
He's asking a good question, I think. Like the Brisa is the source, why what does he mean? What is the meaning of this Gemara that he's saying it's more, they have a special, unique way of doing things, and what's he so impressed with the Persians? It does definitely deserve more understanding.
Who is the Reish Galuta? He's a representative of the king of Israel, and so therefore he has the
Rome.
right to. No. We're talking about the Reish Galuta is a descendant of King David, isn't he?
I don't think so. There were some very political ones. There were some that were more scholarly, but they were basically given this position of being in charge of the liaison, maybe to the government, some type of a leader, political leader who could be a great scholar. Some of them were great scholars, but I don't know that that it necessarily went hand in hand.
I always thought that they were descendants of.
No, I think you're thinking of like a Nasi or Bezdin, you're thinking of like the family line of Rabbi Gamliel and Hillel But that I don't believe is the Reish Galusa is more of a political figure. You're talking about like the leader of Klal Yisrael.
Yeah, but I always thought that they came from the line, the lineage of
Yehuda. I don't think it had anything to do with that. We could look it up over here, maybe if it has. I don't know if they have an index in the back here. It would tell you a little more about Reish Galusas. But I once looked it up a while back about different names of different Reish Galusas, and some of them were like very famous, but others were just just regular people. But it doesn't have an index here, so it doesn't have. Let me see if there's a. Actually, the Steinsaltz might have something on it from the in there. But anyway, that's what I believe, if I remember correctly. We've checked into it. Okay, so bottom line is that the Shulchan Aruch here and the Mishnah Berurah here brings this differentiation, and he explains the Rosh's reason. He says that in the time the reason why the Rosh would wash last was because in the time of the Gemara, everyone had a table and they would wash and eat right away. But if you're going to be mitzi everyone, better to wash last. And he says in a big meal, you have a lot of people eating there. If you wait for everyone, you'll be waiting such a long time. You'll end up speaking. It's best if the important person washes. He says in such a situation, it's best if the most important person washes first and isn't mitzi everyone. He makes his own bracha and eats right away. And everyone else should do the same thing. That would be the ideal situation in a large meal. That's what he ends off with. Now, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, interesting, he brings that if there's many people in a big meal, the Rabbim Mesubim Besuda, so Hagadol, the important person should wash first because of his honor. But there were some Gedolim that would commonly wash last in order not to wait a long time and not to speak or do anything else, like it's explained in chapter 166. So he basically leaves it sort of up in the air that you have both of these options. And it's based on these two interpretations of the Gemara. Okay, so now we have the source of this. Now, okay, now the Gemara talked about not honoring someone when you're on the way. I mean, it seems like this might apply to numerous situations as well, talking practically. It's very nice. We have I just want to mention, we have a group of people from the Regent's Park, different people. They opened I want to thank all the helpers over there to allow so many people to join us today. Yasher Koyach, thank you. And we appreciate having you all with us. The Gemara was talking about honoring an important person when you're traveling. And we saw that there were different opinions of or different situations when it's applicable. And this would apply. I mean, do you let the person wants to come in line? Do you let him go before you? He wants to come to the cash register, and should you let the rabbi go first? Or you're I mean, this would apply. He's waiting for different situations. You're waiting online for something, you let them. Now, of course, if you're making a chil Hashem, there's goyim behind you, or there's yidden behind you, there's anyone behind you. You can't just go and honor an important person to go before you. But if you're the last guy in line, and you let, that might be a way to honor someone. And so this is the situation. You want, you have the right of way. Who do you let go first? You're at a 4-way stop sign or something. You let the rabbi go first. These are mechabdin b'drachim. Do you honor someone and let someone honor someone on the on the way? Anyway, so we saw in Taisus over here. Taisus had brought a case where someone was where we see that you're supposed to give someone the right of way, give more important person. And so Taisus says there's a difference between if they're traveling together, they're leaving together at the same place, or they happen to meet somewhere and bump into each other on the way, then you don't deal with honoring them. But if you're leaving together, you're sort of like traveling at the same time, you should let the other person go first. We also saw that Rashi seems to imply that this is specifically talking about outside of the city. Inside the city, maybe it doesn't apply. And you could honor outside the city, is where in mechabdin, you don't honor someone with the traveling. But anyway, but these laws, I mean, they could have practical application if if we figure out the details of when they actually apply, into what situation would you be obligated to, or would it be appropriate? Now, one of the commentaries mentions that the reason why you don't honor important people is if you're going to honor them, then you'll never get to work. Like, let's say you're a 4-way stop sign. You're going to start letting this guy go first, and that guy go first, another guy, you're leaving shul, and now you're letting everyone, you'll never get anywhere. So therefore, there's reason to say, and this opinion holds even inside a city. This applies, that ein mechabdin, you don't honor someone. He says that would be an issue. You're never going to get anywhere. So that's one of the understandings of ein mechabdin. That would be the reason not to honor someone, because then you'll let everyone cut you. Now, the other thing is, the other simple explanation that we explained was on the roads, you don't let someone go first, because it's actually could lead to some type of danger. It's dangerous, and therefore the same reason why you don't let someone go first on the bridge. It could be dangerous, and the explanation I saw in the commentaries about the bridge is either because it's too much weight on the bridge, that you're at the edge of the bridge, you're putting weight, and then you're going to have someone else go in front of you. You're going to actually be double the weight now on the bridge, or it's going to cause more weight on the bridge than should be expected, or whatever. That could be a problem. It could also be, the other explanation is that it's actually more dangerous to go first, because you sort of you might, if there's any hole in the bridge, you're letting the other guy fall in the hole first, and so you end up safe, and you're letting the other guy, you're sort of like letting him suffer the risk of danger, and that would be a dishonor. So it's better not to honor someone by going, because that way is really honoring them, you going first instead of them going first. But it basically boils down to what is the situation, and so one of the commentaries, the Ritva says, everything depends on, where the path is, who the person is, and so on. And it's sort of like, it leaves it a little vague, but, that's the, now, there is a commentary here. It says that this whole thing, that you don't honor this person and that person, that this only applies when it's not like a major honorable person. There's someone who's of major importance, maybe the Rav of the city or something like that, so such a situation that you would there's no question that you should let him go first. So there is such a concept of like someone who's definitely like in a higher league. So, regular people. So this guy's a little more scholarly than me. That guy's a little, he's a little more of a community activist. Okay, I don't have to give them precedence. But if let's say it's the Rav of the town, maybe that would be an example where you would give honor. So now, what all this actually boils down to is, let's take this to our story here, where Ravin and Abaye were traveling, and what was Abaye thinking? Now, Ravin did not give him any honor, and Abaye was a little upset. He said, "Why didn't you give me honor? Well, all of a sudden now you're giving me honor when we come to a shul. What about all along the way? You didn't tell me to go first. You kept cutting me off a little and taking the first step. You always were ahead of me. What about where was the honor all along?" And so Abaye was surprised. Now, why was he surprised? See, this is the question of how does this Gemara flow? What was Abaye? In other words, we understand Ravin. Ravin is following what we learned. That and he quoted the Rabbi Yechanan that that you don't in mechabdin ela b'pesach. You're not mechabed except by a doorway, paths. You're not mechabed by travel. But what was Abaye thinking? That's the real question here. So the the simple understanding of this, what Abaye was why he was so surprised, is that Abaye, there's two ways of being mechabed someone. The first step is you don't dishonor. The second step is you give them extra honor. But number one is you don't cut them off. And so what Abaye was surprised that even though, ein mechabdin b'drachim, you don't honor someone on the way, but you don't step in front of them. And that's where Abaye was surprised, and Ravin seemed to take his understanding of the brisa to the extreme. Ein mechabdin b'drachim, I don't honor anyone. That's it. We're not looking at each other. We're going, and he would take this first step. And that was the way he understood. But Abaye said, no, there's two parts. You don't want to go, you don't have to necessarily honor someone on the way, but you shouldn't be like disrespectful. Okay, so that basically is the understanding, a little more understanding of the Gemara that we learned. Yes, Simone.
So there's something where there's an idea, two similar ideas. One is who is honored? He who honors others. And the other is, how do you acquire, one of the ways that you acquire Torah, it's by running away from honor. So it seems kind of surprising, and it's interesting that the Gemara would include Abaye's thoughts, somehow that his thought process got in there, but that he would think, why wasn't I being honored? That seems counter to what a person of that level should be thinking.
Good question. So the commentaries mention this, and they say that he wasn't caring about his own honor. It was the honor of Torah that he was fighting for. In other words, he was demanding that, this is not for myself. He didn't care that someone stood for him, and like he really needed that. But he felt that it's a disrespect for the Hashem's Torah. So that's but that's a good question. The commentary does. There is definitely one or two commentaries that mention this. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say, sometimes when you ride with somebody, it depends. Maybe that your donkey is slower than the other one, and the fast one should really be ahead, or you're walking faster than the other one. It's a lot of reasons that Abaye might be upset, or the other guy might be upset about. Why didn't you let me go first? Because I could have moved faster, whatever it is.
Yeah, but it seems from the way he says it that you're letting me go first now. Why aren't? It sounds like it was a disrespect. It sounds like it has to do with respect and not respect,
Yeah.
not about going fast. I mean, they're traveling together. So, so that okay, my time is up. Okay, we'll have to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. And someone had asked on the chat about